Hey everyone, this is Mike from the Comic Book Trove, here today with another Omnibus review. And today I'm going to take a look at a book that I don't really see being discussed that often. Perhaps it's material that maybe has gone a little bit under the radar over the years, or just not that well known to begin with. But I think it's a pretty fun and interesting read. So today I'm going to showcase and talk a little bit about the Guardians of the Galaxy by Jim Valentino Omnibus. A couple of things I'll say about this before we get going. Firstly, this is out of print I think at the moment, which is always frustrating, I understand, for anybody who doesn't have it and is interested in picking it up. But really, we are in a point of time now with Marvel omnibuses in particular, where it's pretty much not out of the question for any book to really be reprinted at this point in time. So, fingers crossed, this does get a second printing for anybody interested. And secondly, I will also clarify that this is not the Guardians of the Galaxy that we perhaps best know now. This isn't the modern team lineup. It's not the likes of Star-Lord, Gamora, Drax, Groot, and Rocket Raccoon. We all know them now, obviously. Pretty well known in general, thanks to the MCU movies. But this is the original Guardians lineup that preceded that team. And these guys are all fighting and adventuring in the 31st century. So for the vast majority of this stuff, it's taking place 1,000 years in the future of the Marvel Universe of the present, which presents a lot of pretty cool opportunities to explore some fun concepts. Let's take a look at the book itself, though. So firstly, we can see here we've got the same cover on the front of the dust jacket as under the hardcover. This is the cover of issue 1 of the Guardian series. It's artwork by Jim Valentino. And as you might have guessed from his name being on the book, basically all this material in here is by him. So it's written and drawn by Valentino as the main creator. Taking a look at the dust jacket itself, we've got the Guardians logo on the spine there, Jim Valentino's name, of course, and this pretty cool image of the team lineup. The back features a cover gallery of the issues involved, and we can see down there in that little blurb exactly what you're getting in here. It's the full Jim Valentino Guardians run. Takes us up to issue 29, which is when he departed Marvel and became one of the founders of Image Comics with the likes of Todd McFarlane, Rob Liefeld, Mark Silvestri, etc. But yeah, this is a really interesting series. I quite like it. It's obviously very 90s, so it's collecting material from, I think, right mid-1990 up until towards the end of 92. So it's 2 and a bit years of early 90s cosmic Marvel goodness. If you're into the cosmic stuff anyway. If you're not, well, I'll probably say straight away this is likely not one for you. The first kind of 100 or so pages in here is this storyline with the Guardians crossing over into different annuals. So Fantastic Four annual here, there's a Thor annual, Silver Surfer annual. So I think during this story they're all trying to combat the villain Korvac. And this Guardians team, they do periodically travel to the present as well, which I actually prefer it when the stories are taking place in the future, in their present. Really cool artwork here by Ron Lim. Got to just kind of pinpoint and recognize that. I really do like Ron Lim's artwork, especially on the Silver Surfer during this time. He was on that from the kind of late 80s into early 90s, I think. Really cool, just awesome double page spread there. So if you're a fan of the kind of 90s era and this kind of artwork, which you're going to see plenty of as I flick through the book, and if you like the kind of sci-fi cosmic style, then this is probably a series worth checking out, whether that be in this omnibus or reading it digitally, or I think there's trade paperback collections collecting it. This is issue number 1 then, so this is where the series kind of properly gets going. And as I say, you got Jim Valentino as writer and artist throughout, I think, almost all these issues of the Guardians series. And the team lineup, if we take a look at them, and I feel like this is a bit of a test for me because it's been quite a long time since I read this, and let's be honest, these characters individually are not the most iconic amongst all the different superheroes of Marvel, DC, and who else. So I think we have got here probably the most kind of recognizable one is Yondu, you see here, but this is not the same Yondu as, again, is probably best known from the modern era of Guardians and the movies. I think this is supposed to be a distant, relative of Yondu in the future. Who else have we got? So there's Aletta, Charlie 27, 20-something, Charlie something, one of the numbers. Starhawk, Martinex, Nikki, Vance Astro. I think those are the characters. Maybe got like 5 out of 6 there. Yeah, so an interesting team. We see the first appearance of Taserface here, a bit of a novelty character used quite comedically in, I think, the Guardians of the Galaxy 2, the movie. Yeah, so these guys, and they're all in the future. They go on all kinds of pretty cool sci-fi adventures. I really like Jim Valentino's artwork. I don't think I've ever really seen his artwork on anything else, to be honest, other than this series. But I like his style. He's one of the kind of 90s era artists that I can speak, who kind of stands out to me as being one of the better ones. You know, with the likes of Todd McFarlane, for example. But yeah, just one of the artists whose style kind of clicks with me. I just really like it. And yeah, so this is certainly an interesting series where we see throughout here a lot of what's kind of used and explored is this concept of analysing, I suppose, or showing how certain characters and things from the present Marvel Universe, what their kind of long-lasting legacy is. So how those characters or elements of those characters are remembered in this distant future. And we see storylines, for example, where there's this alien race who call themselves the Stark, and their entire society is kind of based around having found some old Stark tech from the present, and they've built their whole society and their civilization on, developing it, using it, and they pretty much worship this idea of Tony Stark as being some kind of god who left this stuff there for them to use. Because, of course, some of the characters from the present of the Marvel Universe are very cosmic characters who are, in many cases, borderline immortal. We see characters like Galactus and the Silver Surfer, who are still alive 1,000 years in the future. What else? Trying to remember. So at one point, I think Vance Astro locates Captain America's shield. Because, the shield would still likely exist, or easily could do. Really cool double-page spread here. I love this with the team lineup here. Charlie 27, that's him. 26, 28. I think I said every number except 27. Yeah, I just really like it. Aletta, this character, she's one of the more interesting ones, I think. I think she's married to the character Starhawk, but initially, at least, they share a body. So only one of them can kind of have a physical form at any one time. But then later they separate so they can both exist at once. Pretty interesting. And as I say, you got lots of this is a very kind of classic sci-fi kind of stuff, It's almost like Star Trek, something like that, where they're on they've got a ship and that's beautiful, stunning. And they they go on these adventures. They go to different planets. They encounter, all kinds of different aliens and monsters, and it's just a fun series. Here's where you get the Captain America shield. So this is where Vance Astro, this guy, becomes the wielder of the shield. I think this is the Vision as well. I think the Vision still exists in some form. I think Mephisto, I think we just saw there, still exists, because again, he likely would. It's just a fun series. I think, there's this character as well, Rancor. So this is another kind of, I think she's related to Wolverine. But she is this kind of vicious, villainous character. All the kind of the sort of savage elements of Wolverine's personality with none of the, nicer parts of his personality, I guess. She's just kind of crazy, pure kind of psycho. I think she's in charge of this kind of regime on this planet. The Guardians kind of go in and try and help liberate it. Really cool artwork, This is, as so often happens when I'm doing these kinds of overviews and looking through the book like this, it's a really good opportunity for me to kind of take a look through books that I've maybe not had a proper look through in a while. And this is one, as so often is the case, that I now feel I need to reread. Just stopping here to take a look at the Phoenix Force. Yet another example of, some familiar element of the present showing up again in this future. And that's really a common theme. It's probably the common theme, to be honest. As I say, it's really kind of exploring the legacy of the Marvel universe of the present. It's well worth reading, though. I think it's a cool series. Ghost Rider appearing in here. Certainly a lot of cool guest appearances. It's really interesting to see these kinds of, effectively, these alternate versions of familiar characters. Really nice pin-up here. Probably the most striking costume design amongst the different Guardians characters, Aletta here. I think Valentino really liked to draw her. Hopefully you get a good idea. As always, when I flick through the books like this, I'm hopeful that it gives you a good bit of insight into, the kind of style of the book. Obviously the art style is going to be the most visual thing that you see. But as I say, the stories as well. So I'm trying not to cover things in so much detail that maybe I spoil anything too much. But as well, just being completely honest, I need to reread a lot of this and familiarize myself with it again. But I can tell you for a fact that I definitely had a good time last time I did read it, albeit that was maybe could well be 4 or 5 years ago now. But you see certainly a lot of sort of 90s tropes, like absolutely massive crazy guns. Oh yeah, this is a story where there's this kind of whole gang or this group of Punishers. So this, again, that's just to almost just keep repeating myself, but it's kind of another element of the present that's had this sort of legacy and impact on the future. So Frank Castle's actions as the Punisher clearly reverberated for a long time, and there were a lot of copycats. Certainly that's the implication here, all through the centuries, to the point where there's almost this cult, this gang of Punishers who are, enforcing that kind of ideology of ruthlessly punishing crime. I think there's a subplot as well that starts to come through here. We see Rancor reappearing, it's just a recurring character, comes back. I think at some point there's a subplot where Aletta and Van Sastro have this kind of romance building up between them. And that causes some tension because Aletta is kind of married to Starhawk. But as I say, they separated and he kind of vanishes from the series for a while and then comes back. And, some drama ensues. Certainly very 90s artwork though. But I think that, as I say, I just really like the style that Valentino has to his artwork. This is where the Silver Surfer turns up. And I think this links into a Galactus story, even though, yeah, here he is. The big guy himself, the big G. So yeah, even though the Surfer is not, herald of Galactus anymore, at least I don't think so, if I'm remembering it rightly. He's still got that association with Galactus at this point. Oh yeah, and Van Sastro also kind of just gets a full-on Captain America costume. Kind of does away with his initial costume and mixes it up with that one. And then I think it all ends, when we're getting towards the end here. It ends on a bit of a, I'll say, another really cool double-page spread there. It ends on a little bit of a low note though, because I think the final couple of issues in here are crossover issues or tie-in issues with the Infinity War event. That being the sequel to the Infinity Gauntlet event. So, I don't know, I think a lot of the time these tie-ins to events like that, they weren't always the strongest, they were just kind of editorially forced, and I think that was the case with these ones. This is a cool story though. Potential spoiler alert here about who this guy is, but he's this kind of mysterious figure. Though they don't know who he is, but he's helping them out, and it turns out, I believe, that he is the much older, obviously, Wonder Man of the present. Another cool pin-up there. So here we are then, issue 26, and yeah, then we get to the Infinity War crossover issues being the last couple, and during that event basically there were all these kind of evil clone versions of most of the Marvel heroes, so a lot of characters ended up fighting a kind of evil monstrous version of themselves, and that is what happens here basically. The Guardians come back to the present. Can't remember how they come back to the present. I'm sure there's some convenient explanation as to how that's possible. But yeah, that's what they do. Yeah, and this is the last issue actually. Valentino is not penciling it. This is Herb Trimpe, and this is unrecognizable from his artwork during earlier years. You know, you would never think that this is him. He's kind of going all in on that Rob Liefeld style. I mean, if you told me that was Liefeld artwork, I would believe you if I didn't know it wasn't. He really kind of changed his artworks, his art style during the 90s to try and conform with this style that was being set with by other artists, and I don't think it worked. He just wasn't good at that. I don't think he should have tried to force that change. It just looks pretty ugly, to be honest. And this is what I mean when it ends on a bit of a low note. You know, the story and this artwork. Really strange that he did that. Okay, so in 29, and this is the final issue. But at least they did know that Valentino was going, because he credited here as Jim Adios Valentino. But again, whilst he plotted this, you know, the wheels were clearly already in motion for him to be leaving Marvel at this point. So scripted and penciled by someone else. But then this is cool. This is a bonus story in the back. This is Marvel Superheroes Presents, issue 18. And this was the first appearance of the Guardians of the Galaxy team. So Arnold Drake and Gene Colan being co-creators of this. And I think this is from 1969, 68 or 69. And it's just a nice bonus to have it in the back here to get this first appearance of this team. Pretty cool. Gene Colan, you know, great artwork, great style of art. Just one of the greats, really. And then we get to the bonus section. So there's quite a few kind of Marvel magazine interviews in here, features, written about it. And then these kind of covers and some original pencils by Valentino. Some trade paperback covers. And then these bright pink pages again to end the book. Yeah, it's an interesting read. I need to reread it, but certainly if you're into the kind of sort of 90s style, if you looked through any of that and thought that Valentino's artwork looks pretty cool, and I think it is, and if you're into sort of classic sci-fi storytelling in a distant future setting, then this is certainly well worth checking out. It's not, as I say, the most memorable stuff. It's not the best stuff you'll ever read, but it's certainly worth reading, and interesting to see this original Guardians lineup that really is mostly forgotten, I think, these days, having been replaced by the much more iconic modern lineup of characters that we're more familiar with now. But you know what, as always, thanks for watching. If you've stuck with me all the way through this, let me know what you think of this run. As I say, this is a run that I haven't heard too many opinions on. It doesn't seem to be discussed very often from what I've seen, so I would be interested in hearing what you've got to say about it if you're familiar with it at all, whether you liked it, didn't like it. Are you just kind of on the fence about it, indifferent towards it, whatever. But yeah, do let me know. Happy to hear from you. And I will be back again soon to discuss something else.